huge. All right, let's see. Hello, everyone. It is 6:54, and we will be officially starting our book chat for tonight. Right at 7, I am hoping and praying, prepared and believing that this live stream will go well this evening, that it will do what it is supposed to do. For those of you who plan to join me on Substack, I apologize yet again. Um, Apparently, I am not at the status yet where access to the live stream tool in the app is perpetually available to me. So, last week we were able to get the live stream up, but when I went to go live a few minutes ago just to test the stream again today, it's sending me back through the process of applying to use the um, live feature. So, as far as what I know, I meet all of the qualifications to use the live tool, and I see people go live at least weekly, some people multiple times a week. And a lot of those are much larger creatives. As far as, well, maybe not so much larger creatives, but their platform is a lot larger than mine on Substack. So I'm not sure if um, I have to reapply every week. That's what it seems like. And if that is the case, I'm willing to do that for those people who prefer Substack over YouTube or Facebook because I completely get it. But what I may do is just do something special after we're done with this book that is exclusive to Substack, just to make up for it for those of you who reluctantly came over to YouTube or Facebook to participate. But that's what it is for Substack tonight. We should be up and running and good to go on YouTube and Facebook. We're going to be starting in about 4 minutes. Tonight, our plan was to discuss chapters 1 through 5. However, I am fully prepared for us to not get all the way to chapter 5 once we really get to discussing everything that we want to talk about from the chapters that we've read so far. If we have to push 5 over into another week, I'm 100% okay with that. Um, Really, really, really good stuff this week. I've gotten some really good feedback, and I really hope that the people who have shared with me, um, you know, what they've been getting from the book and how they're experiencing what they're reading, are able to jump on live tonight. Um, at any rate, I will continue to leave them up on the page. We'll be starting right at 7, so let me take a pause and share this really quick in the group so that um, everybody can get on, because I believe there may be some people in the group that were invited by someone else, and so they may not be my friend to see it on my profile. So give me a quick second and make sure everybody has it. If you are on with me tonight and you are a part of the book club in Facebook, let me know if you're able to see the live in the group page, please. Let me know if you're able to see the live in the group page. Um, All right, it looks like we're good. Looks like we're good. Let me turn this down. All right, it's 6:59. As y'all are coming in, do me a favor and like the video, hit share, share it to your friends on your profile. If you are on YouTube, share it to your community page so others can see that we're on. Also, I forgot about that. Please let me know what I'm sounding like. If you can hear me well, please let me know in the Facebook or the YouTube chat if you're able to hear me well. Because that is going to for sure make a difference tonight. All right, we are at 7:01. Let's go ahead and jump in. Welcome to the Creative Scholar Book Club. I am your host, Dr. Danetta, and this month we are reading through All About Love by Bell Hooks. We're celebrating Black History Month by reading Black authors, and we're celebrating Love Month. Um, we're reading about love this month in one of the most amazing ways you could read about love. Um, we're going to be discussing chapters 1 through 5. And I'm checking through now to see comments for YouTube and Facebook. So let me know in the chat if you're a book club member, you've been reading, and you're here. Just say hello in the chat. I want to make sure that I don't miss any of your comments. I'll be checking back and forth between Facebook and YouTube to make sure that I do not miss any of your comments. All right. As we are going in, one of the things that we talked about doing last week was as we read through each chapter, we were going to share a quick summary, 2 or 3 sentences that says what it is that we drew from that chapter. And then we'll go through and share some of our favorite quotes from each chapter. So we'll start with chapter 1. All right. Hey, hey. Thank you for joining. And you can hear me just fine. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for letting me know that. Because last week, oh boy, we had some interesting sound, but we got through it. All right, so what we're going to do is start with chapter 1. Welcome. Y'all let me know in the chat how you're doing this evening. Let me know how you're enjoying the book. Let others know as they join so that they can catch up in the comments how you're enjoying the book. And we're starting out with chapter 1. What we're doing in the chat now is everyone is dropping in the chat a quick summary, 2 sentences, 3 that shares what you drew from chapter 1. What was the main idea to you, or what was the main thing that you came away with from chapter 1? Another thing you can do to share with us what you drew from chapter 1 is to leave your favorite quote. So I'm going to give y'all a quick second to do that while I flip over to mine. So, the title of chapter 1 is Clarity, Give Love Words. And this chapter has pretty much been used to give a definition of love, according to Bell Hooks and her studies and her life experiences, and her really lifelong pursuit of the meaning of love and finding that experience and being able to provide and participate in that experience with other people. So I'm giving y'all a second, and I'm looking in the chat to see what y'all are gonna write. But while you're doing that, I'll share one of the opening quotes of the book. And it's by someone named Diane Ackerman. It says, as a society, we are embarrassed by love. We treat it as if it were an obscenity. We reluctantly admit to it. Even saying the word makes us stumble and blush. Love is the most important thing in our lives, a passion for which we would fight or die, and yet we're reluctant to linger over its name. Without a supple vocabulary, we can't even talk or think about it directly. So that was the opening quote of the book. All right, I'm holding out for y'all's feedback in the chat here. I'm on Facebook now, and I am holding out for y'all's feedback on what did you draw from chapter one. What is um what is your 2 to 3 sentence summary of what you drew from chapter one? All right. So while you're writing, I will I will share some of my favorite quotes from chapter one while you guys are typing in your summary of what you drew from chapter one. Some of my favorite quotes. One is on page 3. It says, our confusion about what we mean when we use the word love is the source of our difficulty in loving. And when I read that, what I thought about is the fact that, um, you know, different people have different value systems, or we all have an assumption about who and what and where we should find our definition of love from. And of course, throughout reading, she mentions people of faith or different faiths, and how love is portrayed, in different spaces throughout the book. But of course, as a person of faith, something that I think about often, now that I'm actually thinking through and processing what do I believe love is, while we're reading through this, I think about my faith base. I think about, you know, what I've known all of my life, what I have read about and experienced in different ways. So, a simple way to say for a lot of people, especially within the Christian faith, is God is love. God defines love. What does the Bible say about love? But it's interesting how, even saying that, even quoting that, even knowing that and believing that, is still up to our interpretation and how we process and what we really come to know and understand about God, what we think love is, and how we think we're supposed to display it, or even, our perception of God, what we believe about God, sometimes not necessarily even based upon what He has said, but based upon what other people have taught us, or things that we experience, what we think God is or is not doing, who we think God is and who we think God is not. That's probably the first thing that came to my mind, as I'm processing through what is my definition of love? Where did I learn that definition? And did I learn it thoroughly? If I say that, I'm a Christian, I'm a believer, and I learned what love is from the Bible, did I really learn what love is from the Bible, or did I take what someone's interpretation of what I read, or have I studied, have I experienced, God's love? Those are questions that, things that I process through, for myself. So having her to really challenge my own perspective of love and where it came from, I, I just think it's such a valuable thing. And I said this at the beginning of the book club when we were reading through Watchman Nee, um, that I know that every book that we read in the book club will not be a faith based book, but every single thing we read is still examining concepts of what it means to be a person and experience things in an honest way. Like what are our true experiences? How can we peel back the layers to grow and to learn to heal? And I think, at this place in life, like what do we know well enough to teach the next generation responsibly is something that is in my mind a lot, and a lot of you because you have children, or a lot of you because you have grandchildren, or because you work with youth, or even if none of those categories apply, most likely, if you're reading this book, you are a person who's had experiences that you are processing yourself about um, where you were taught love. And so I like the fact that she puts it out there. A lot of the disagreement, a lot of the disillusionment, a lot of the confusion, a lot of the lack of love that a lot of us either feel or have felt at some place in our life comes from the confusion about what it really is. What is our expectation? Should we expect what we're expecting? And if so, how do we get to that? All right. So let's see here. So far, page 13 was one. Um, Helena says to begin by always thinking of love as an action rather than a feeling is one way in which anyone using the word in this manner automatically assumes accountability and responsibility. That is a really good one. I have that one highlighted as well. I'm going to read that again, and that's on page 13 for those who are reading along with us. To begin by always thinking of love as an action rather than a feeling is one way in which anyone using the word in this manner automatically assumes accountability and responsibility. Really good one. All right, Sharia shares affection is only one ingredient of love. Really good ones. Um, both that I have highlighted as well. I think that the quote that Sharia left, that's the one on page 5, where she shares several elements of love, affection being one ingredient. And I'll read that quote in its entirety. Affection is only one ingredient of love. To truly love, we must learn to mix various ingredients: care, affection, recognition, respect, commitment, and trust, as well as honest and open communication. Learning faulty definitions of love when we are quite young makes it difficult to be loving as we grow older. Let's see, another quote from Helena. She says, I thought of the scripture John 3:16, where the quote in the book says, I write of love to bear witness both to the danger in this movement and to call for a return to love. Redeemed and restored, love returns us to the promise of everlasting life. When we love, we can let our hearts speak. Another really good one. Really good ones. All right, so let's talk about a couple more and we'll move on from chapter 1. Because, yeah, these next couple ones, they get deep. They get deeper, and I know there's a lot of things we're gonna want to talk about, but I truly want to honor the time so that we'll be able to keep reading and keep meeting every week. Um, I like that she differentiates between loving and cathexis. I'll read the whole quote. It says, when we feel deeply drawn to someone, we connect with them. That is, we invest feelings or emotions in them. The process of investment wherein a loved one becomes important to us is called cathexis. Right? And she references another book by an author named Peck. It says Peck rightly emphasizes that most of us confuse cathecting with loving. Hmm. So I'll share before we move on to chapter 2. She gives a definition, which, the more I read and the more I think about it, processing through my own experiences and the experiences I desire to have, her definition really rings true. And this is on page 6. She says, when we understand love as the will to nurture our own and another's spiritual growth, it becomes clear that we cannot claim to love if we are hurtful and abusive. She says love and abuse cannot coexist. That was an important um, thing that she pulled out in getting to the definition. Um, let's flip to, man, I don't want to skip all of these. But I told myself I was not going to try to rush through to get to the next chapter. So I know I can't share every single quote, but I do want to share some of these. So a couple of things that she defines in getting to the actual way that she words a working definition of love. The first was that love and abuse do not cannot coexist. And so, that made me think about how, oftentimes in situations where abuse is involved, people will still say, that they love the person that they abuse, whether it's financially, physically, verbally, um, psychologically, however. And I feel like because we're actually thinking about different aspects of love that do not make a total, um, I guess, definition of love, it makes it make a little bit more sense when we say that love and abuse cannot coexist. Love and affection can coexist. Love and certain other, excuse me, not love and affection. Abuse and affection can coexist. Abuse and some of the other cathexis can coexist. Abuse and care can even coexist. But the true working meaning that she's sharing in chapter 1 of what love truly is means that abuse and love can't coexist. Speaking of the care part, she points out, which I think a lot of people can identify with, the difference between care and love, and how a lot of people would describe their experiences in certain situations, be it in, growing up, or even being within friendship, or within marriage, within different communities. Something that we might describe as love, it might be a part of love, but it's actually care. All right. Let's see. Okay. You said you have the highlight also on page 6. Yeah. There's some really good ones. I really tried to get all of the good ones. Um, she said too many of us need to cling to a notion of love that either makes abuse acceptable or at least makes it seem that whatever happened was not that bad. All right, she goes on to say, page 7. Um, and this is where, toes are stepped on, probably for most people, especially um, you know, if you're someone who has not begun any kind of processing or working through therapeutically, or even, within yourself processing some of this will step on some toes. She said, with therapeutic help, I was able to see the term dysfunctional as a useful description and not as an absolute negative judgment. She said, my family of origin provided throughout my childhood a dysfunctional setting, and it remains one. This does not mean that it is not also a setting in which affection, delight, and care are present. And I love that she is willing to say that way, because I think one of the things that stops us from growth oftentimes is fear of looking at things for what they actually are, because we have had to um, numb ourselves, or we've just learned to cope in certain situations. And especially when we think about how we may process things within the Christian faith, you learn to be thankful, you learn to be grateful, you learn to be forgiving, you learn to be long suffering, you learn to be to have self control. And so, within that, sometimes we don't realize that we operate in denial about what it is that we either have experienced or are experiencing. And to me, the way she brought that out, it really helps to prepare the heart of the person who's gonna be brave enough to continue to read this and examine and process, and have an open mind and an open heart. Basically, you know healing starts with admitting that it it is a need, and not acknowledging that certain things are dysfunctional within us, or even within family systems, within relationships or organizations. When we're willing to say, like, even certain things that are praised within certain settings are still dysfunctional, if you're thinking about the true meaning of love and what the true meaning of health as a person really is. So I like that she really kind of sets it up right there. Um, I'm gonna move on. We are at 7:21, so I'm definitely gonna push forward and through chapter one. So basically, chapter one is her acknowledging that the lack of a common definition of love is one of the places where there's confusion. And she goes on to give examples of different reasons, I guess, why we're confused and don't have a working definition of love. On page 13, um, the quote that Helena shared earlier about seeing it as an action brings accountability and responsibility. That was one that I also highlighted. And then also, at the bottom of the page, she said, to think of actions shaping feelings is one way we rid ourselves of conventionally accepted assumptions, such as that parents love their children, or that one simply falls in love without exercising will or choice, that there are such things as crimes of passion, i.e., he killed her because he loved her so much. If we were constantly remembering that love is as love does, we would not use the word in a manner that devalues and degrades its meaning. When we are loving, we openly and honestly express care, affection, responsibility, respect, commitment, and trust. Um, and basically, I think a good way to remember what words she used to define love, it's basically a commitment to contributing to your spiritual growth and the spiritual growth of another. So she basically pulls all of those things together and says, when you're committed to your spiritual growth and someone else's spiritual growth, you're going to lean towards more loving behavior. Your commitment is going to push you towards what love truly is. And an example that came to my mind for that is when it comes to people who are athletic, an athletic person, or a person who is a part of an athletic team. When there are rules and parameters and I guess goals, like a common goals, there are certain things that become a part of a culture. For people that play a particular sport, like excuse me, I don't run track. I never have run track. So if I'm spending a lot of time, um, with people who are preparing for a huge competition and they eat a certain way and they do certain things, they may not be exactly alike, but it's just certain things that are common to that culture because the goal is, the health of their body. The goal is, you know, the longevity, of their lungs, the strength of their endurance to do a particular thing within the track and field sport. You know, if I don't run or if I'm not a part of a track and field sport, and I'm trying to make the people who are a part of that track and field sport do everything to accommodate me, and I don't have that particular goal, we're gonna fall off. There's gonna be a different definition of what is necessary on a daily basis to be healthy, and making that connection with being being and doing someone who is committed to spiritual health, your spiritual health, and the spiritual health of another person. It's gonna automatically, if that commitment is truly there, it's gonna automatically push us towards being what is truly loving, which encompasses all of those different, aspects that she mentioned. All right, any other quotes for chapter one? Drop them now, and I will share before we move on to chapter two, which is Justice Childhood Love Lessons, is the title of it. I'll give y'all about another minute or so if anyone wants to leave quotes for chapter one that you want. And if you can, if you have your book with you, make sure you put the page number so we can all go and check that quote out. If you don't have your book with you, completely fine. And you don't have to worry about the page number because we still want your quotes. I'll give y'all another minute or so. And I want to give the page number for this one quote before I move on. Um, it was. I read it already, but I'm going to read it again just to point it out. It's on page 6. She said, when we understand love as the will to nurture our own and another's spiritual growth, it becomes clear that we cannot claim to love if we are hurtful and abusive. So, the first part of that is the definition of love that we are carrying with us throughout the rest of this reading. When we understand love as the will to nurture our own and another's spiritual growth. All right, and before we move on, I definitely want to say, um, I know this book is challenging, for a lot of people. But if the goal is truly to know, and to grow and to be healthier, um, to not, I guess, think of the things that we are reading as a means of accusation or even as a means of um, diminishing good experiences that we've had that maybe we categorize as love. It's really to give greater clarity of the things that we have experienced so that as we move forward in life and in love, we can do better because we know better. We can strive to do better. Even if you're someone who's watching this and you're not a person of faith, this may not apply to you. But for people of faith, and I would say specifically people who are believers in Christ, people who believe in the God of the Bible, we believe what we read in the scripture about God being love and about him being the one who loved us first, being the example that we follow, being the one who teaches us how to know him, how to know and love ourselves, and how to um, love others, we should definitely be challenged by this, even in ways where we are being shown ourselves so that we can grow and improve. I definitely want to say that to encourage anyone who's watching. You know, you may or may not even participate in the conversation. You may or may not read the book. But if you hear something, um, or you see something when you're reading, you know, my encouragement and my challenge to you is to press into that and definitely, you know, be willing to open up and see if there's some growth that can take place. I certainly am. All right, if anyone else wants to drop a quote, you may do so. I'm going to move on to chapter 2, Justice, Childhood Love Lessons. I would love for y'all to go ahead and drop your chapter 2 quotes. Thank y'all who have joined. Blessings to you too. Thank you for joining tonight. Um, Go ahead and drop your quotes from chapter 2, if you will, in the chat. I enjoyed this chapter a lot. I feel anyone who has gone through any forms, of therapy, or even if you've not gone through any formal therapy, but you've done some work within yourself, if you've done some work with yourself and God, um, if you are someone who believes in deliverance ministry, whatever therapeutic um, avenue you have walked down, if you have done any work on processing your past at all, even if you're just getting started, I know that this chapter resonates. Um, it resonates with you. I also thought about, you know, the celebration of Black History Month, and even though, truth be told, we celebrate all year around here. Um, but especially when it comes to reading authors like Bell Hooks, like this is truly not a February only thing. But I just thought about how, you know, when we think about as a country, some of the things that we are walking through and experiencing now, um, there's literally no way for us to even process what we walk through presently without having some understanding of the past and how it impacts now. Um, and she gets to it, I think, in chapter 3, how it's one thing to remember and to tell the story of and to be able to be honest about the things that we've gone through. But it's another thing to be willing to be responsible with that information to move in the right direction when it comes to our own lives and how we handle ourselves and others. Um, I just thought about just how relevant a lot of this stuff is when we talk about Black people in America, and when we talk about just right now in the times that we're living in, what people who are have is historically been marginalized um, are going through. We see a lot of the things perpetuated in our background, not just in our country, but when we think back on our, on our ancestors, even though, as a people, we strive to, we continue to strive to become, we continue to overcome, we still perpetuate some of the ideals that our ancestors experienced, being enslaved people. We still perpetuate some of those ideals within our own family systems. And so I love how she really pulls a lot of that out in this book. There's a couple places where it's very obvious that, the book is dated, like when it talks about media, but that's really kind of it. Other than, I don't think it. I think there's a place where I made a note that social media is a particular avenue that she didn't mention because of the time that this book was published. But other than that, everything she's saying is spot on about what we're experiencing now. So I wanted to point that out. All right, let me read. I have a quote here, page 14. Mm. What we cannot imagine, we cannot come into being. Let's see, page 14. Oh, is that oh, that's at the end of the last chapter. Let's see. Oh, what we cannot imagine cannot come into being. Okay, gotcha. All right. So chapter 2, childhood love lessons. So she points out, going back to the origins, where do we learn love from? Where do we learn what it is? And that very first part there on page 17, she says, whether our homes are happy or troubled, our families functional or dysfunctional, it's the original school of love. Going down on that same page, she said, let me read this quote that was shared first. Helena puts, in homes where material privileges abound, children suffer emotional neglect and abuse. Yeah, for sure. And I'll go to page 23 in a minute too, because I like how she shared the contrast between the two. Another quote on page 17, just like the lie the grown ups told when they explained after harsh punishment, it hurts me more than it hurts you. There is nothing that creates more confusion about love in the minds and hearts of children than unkind or cruel punishment meted out by the grown ups they have been taught they should love and respect. Another one she says is, these children, though not in any way abused or uncared for, are usually as unclear about love's meaning as their neglected and emotionally abandoned counterparts. And so this is a different quote, but it ties into the same thing that Helena shared. Basically, a lot of times we make that judgment, between privileged and underprivileged children, and we might feel like, well, underprivileged children, may appreciate things more, and children who are privileged don't. But in both situations, there's a lot of times some kind of neglect, even if there was not any blatant abuse. And oftentimes, um, the neglect is emotional, and that's from overprivileged to your everyday common average family. Oftentimes, if there is no physical abuse, there is some area where we can point out emotional neglect. And that's from generation to generation. This generation now seems to be becoming a lot more aware of the importance of the emotional aspect of raising children. But yeah, we usually see one or another. um I like how on page 18 she said, as children grow, they associate love more with acts of attention, affection, and care. On page 18, as opposed to, she spoke about how um, sometimes we unconsciously teach our children love in a context of reward and punishment. If you're good, you're rewarded with love. If you're bad, then you're punished. Maybe, that might not be every family, but there are ways within a family setting, within schools, you know, so many places where young minds are basically waiting for the ones who are supposed to know better to teach them to love. And oftentimes we don't even realize that we're teaching them that love is a reward and punishment kind of thing. In a lot of ways, the same when it comes to being in a faith based setting. We teach that God is love. We teach that salvation is by faith and by grace. But there are a lot of ways in which, even when handling um, shortcomings, we tend to unconsciously teach that you are shown, love, you're shown affection, you're shown care and regard when you do well, as opposed to addressing the areas of shortcoming and being able to show that, love is not contingent upon your perfection. So that's something that really stands out. Let's see another one. Ooh, that's a good one. Yeah, that was a good one. Page 19, Sharia says, there can be no love without justice. All right, really good. Let's go over to page 19, as a matter of fact. Um, Let's see where that is. Oh, at the bottom. So she mentions another book that I was like, oh man, this is an older book, but I'm sure that it will really still resonate. It's called Raised in Captivity: Why Does America Fail Its Children by Lucia Hodgson. Lucia Hodgson documents the reality of lovelessness in the lives of a huge majority of children in the United States. She says every day thousands of children in our culture are verbally and physically abused, starved, tortured, and murdered. There are the true, and I'm supposed to say unalived. I just forgot about that. Hopefully, YouTube will allow me to continue. They are the true victims of intimate terrorism in that they have no collective voice and no rights. They remain the property of parenting adults to do with as they will. There can be no love without justice, which is the quote Sharia just shared at the bottom of page 19. Until we live in a culture that not only respects but also upholds basic civil rights for children, most children will not know love. Um, and I guess depending on who you ask and what demographic we're talking about, where you live in this country and in the world, some might say that things have gotten a little bit better since the time the original publishing of this book, which was 2001. And sometimes, progress seems so slow that when we are actually experiencing it in our lifetime, we don't realize how much progress has been made. So the original publishing in this book was 2001. And considering that it is 2025, that seems very long ago. But I will say, um, a very good friend of mine, a very good friend and brother of mine who I've known for what I realized is over 20 years today, shared a video with me earlier this evening, and it is a video of me and some other people in 2002, I believe. And when I realized that that was 23 years ago, and how much has transpired in that time, it's like sometimes in our own lives, it just time goes by so fast, and we are in our own lives as well as processing what's happening in the world because something is always happening. It takes a minute sometimes to really look at progress that has been made or maybe places where there has been no progress. But there's something about a book when you're able to look back at like when it was published and compare what's happening now. So I would ask you all, and I'm going to come back and read these quotes because I do see y'all posting them. Thank you. What do you think from 2001 when this book was published to now? Do you feel there has been progress in the area that she mentioned on page 20 when she said a culture that not only respects but also upholds basic civil rights for children? Do you feel that our country has improved? Or maybe I don't even want to say the world because I don't feel, well, let me not speak for y'all. I would say for me, I have not done the research to compare worldwide what civil rights are for children presently. So I don't feel confident to speak on that. But if any of you have done that research, I would love to hear what you have to say. Do you feel, if you been around in an adult or close to an adult, or you remember your experiences as a child from 2001 to 2025, do you believe that children's civil rights have improved? What is required for how we treat children? What is required for how we manage ourselves as it relates to caring for children? I love to see in the chat on YouTube. Right now, I'm looking at Facebook comments because it's really kind of hard for me to go back and forth with the setup that I have, which every week I see something that I can do to improve. I see another device I need to have up to do this. I'm able to stream everything now, but I can only look on comments with one because I have another phone. So next week we'll have the old MacBook up so I can actually see comments from YouTube as well. There's a way for me to see comments in this stream, but I don't know it. I got the microphone to work this week, and that's a win. A win is a win. We'll try it again next week. So if you're on YouTube, I will come back and read your comments, but I hope you're discussing amongst each other there. I'd love for you to pop over to Facebook if you have something to say that I did not see. Make me see it. Come over here so we can see your comments on Facebook as well. All right, so I'm looking back really quick, and I'm going to read y'all's comments, I promise. Do y'all feel like there has been, okay, I see. So Sharia, who would definitely have current information for this, you said, I would say no. I haven't done the research, but I would say no. And I feel your opinion is valuable, especially given that you have children in today's world as well as your field. You see firsthand every day, what is happening with children. So thank you for sharing your feedback, Sharia. Oh, Lakeisha, you said absolutely not. You don't feel like it has improved. Okay. I'm hearing y'all. That's two no's. That is two no's. Okay, well, would you say and that's from, would you say legislation, or would you say laws and policies have improved as far as advocating for the rights of children? Let me know that. That might be more specific. Answer might not change, but I'm wondering if, what do y'all think? Helena says, I think about the children who were placed in cages not too long ago in the media. I would have to say no. Thank you for bringing that up, because that is an important aspect that does shed some light on the question I just asked. We desire our families to be like those we saw on the screen because this is a quote she's sharing. We desire our families to be like those we saw on the screen because we were witnessing loving parents, love households, expressing to parents. Let me read it in here, page 27, because I know exactly which quote you're sharing, and I want to make sure I read it verbatim. Thank you for pulling that one. We desired our families. Yeah, we desired our families to be like those we saw on the screen because we were witnessing loving parenting, loving households. Expressing to parents our desire to have families like the ones we saw on the screen, we were often told that the families were not realistic. The reality was, however, that parents who come from unloving homes have never learned how to love and cannot create loving home environments or see them as realistic when watching them on television. The reality they are most familiar with and trust is the one they know intimately. Thank you for bringing that quote. That's a really good one. And it really does. It really does make us. Uh, this book really does make you think, like, what is really, what are ways that we feel like, oh, it's realistic, to realistic. Oh, it's unrealistic to expect that a family could be a particular way. And I feel like I don't even want to say a balanced approach. I feel like, there's two ways we can look at it. Obviously, on television, um, it is it is not in real time, and we see the perfection, but at the same time, if it was really good television, like the shows that she mentioned here, well, good in her observation, then there should have been a realistic portrayal, meaning that the parents were not perfect. They did make mistakes, but the elements that she pulls out are things that we have to look at when it comes to being able to be honest, to being able to examine perspectives and points of view of little ones, of children, of people who we have the rule over. Um, and I want to make sure I share that too, because just a quote in and of itself, if you did not read, or if you're not reading the book or you've never read it, then you might think like, well, what is she saying? Is she saying that we should have all been like the people on TV? But really, the elements that she pulled out from certain television shows are things that some of us may recognize or identify that were good about our families of origin, how we were raised. And then there may be other things that we might say, like, oh, I really didn't think real people really did that. But then as we became adults, we saw, like, oh, okay, people are different in different households. And pulling out, like, the basis of what she's saying here, basically, we all love, our parents loved, we love, our children will love based upon what we experienced until we learn better, until we learn and we grow. And just a quick fact that I something that I think is important, that is so interesting, that I've studied a little bit more lately, not as much as I would like to and maybe will in the future, um is the birth order. So I've studied birth order just a tiny little bit, and I actually, well, I won't say the name. Anyway, I'm I hope to bring someone to y'all really soon through the podcast that talks about the psychology of birth order, because it's hilarious, but at the same time it's like, oh my gosh, that is so true. Um, but back to what we're talking about. That you do what you know to do, and usually, unless you're in a space in your life where you are intentionally challenging yourself past your comfort zone, you're going to do what is most intimately known to you from your experience, which as children is within our family of origin. And then, hopefully, as we grow and we mature and we learn as we are through reading this and we examine ourselves, we're able to see how we can improve in some of those different areas. Here were some of the things that she said. She did. Let me see. Did she say them in the quote? Um, no. Here were some of the things that she said about those shows, those family shows, that were elements that maybe we thought, or maybe not us, maybe our parents thought were not realistic, and maybe some of our parents did. We've all had different experiences, but I'd love to see y'all's feedback on that as well. She said, "Oh, where was it? Oh, there was nothing utopian about the way problems were resolved in these shows." Basically, she's saying it wasn't any there wasn't anything unrealistic about this, even if we thought that it was. Parent parent and child discussion, critical reflection, and finding a way to make amends was usually the process by which misbehavior was addressed. And some of us did experience those kinds of things, within our homes. Maybe not all, maybe some. But I would love to see your feedback in the chat now. Of, and I know, this is a sticky one. You don't have to give personal examples, but you can, if you don't mind, um, of ways, maybe a show that you thought like, oh, whatever, this is the ideal, or this is the perfect whatever. But then when you became an adult, maybe you felt like, oh, that really wasn't realistic, especially when you had your own kids. And you had to be held to the same standard that you hold your parents to, or even higher, because you you have a foundation that you're able to build off of and learn and grow. I love to hear to look in the comments and see like how did you feel about, like, I know for my generation it was the Cosby Show or um Family Matters or am I, let me not date myself, but it is what it is. I know my age and most of you do too. Yeah, those were the shows, but I guess I think there were some elements for me that were more important than others. I think certain, like Moesha was another show. What are some of the other shows that I looked at that I could say maybe had some of these elements that she mentioned? But I don't really ever remember wanting to have those families for whatever reason. I did not necessarily desire to, like, oh, I wish I had a family like this. I don't know why. I think my wish I had a type of thing was always a creative type thing. Like my imagination of what could be different about my life always involved something I could do, something I could do or be per se, which has its own, pathology to it that we'll get to at some point. But, in reference to this book, yeah, I love to see in the comments if anybody felt like that growing up. Let's see. All right, y'all left me several comments. Lakeisha said she does feel with certain laws and policies, maybe there has been some upward growth for children, the rights of children. Sharia says the reality was, however, that, oh no, she was learn how to love them. This is another quote. The reality was, however, that parents who come from, oh, okay, I read that one. I did. I think that's all of the quotes from there. Yeah, I'd love to know in the chat if anybody, let me know and let me ask this direct question and get you guys to answer it in the chat. Was there anything that you thought was realistic, I guess, as a child when it came to maybe how a child should be treated, or maybe what you desired, that now that you have your own children, you feel could be a challenge? Not like necessarily, I guess basic human needs, but is there anything you had in your mind that you would have liked to experience as a child? It could be from your family, from a teacher, from whoever. That now that you have your own children, you feel like, oh, maybe I was expecting a little bit too much. I often wonder, because I don't have children yet. So, but I do have nieces and nephews, and I've worked with students for many years. So, the challenge, for me often when I learn something is like how to reword certain things or whatever, things like that. I would love to know in the chat if anybody has anything that they feel like, oh, okay, I realize now maybe why a person did or said this as an adult, and I can see that it was challenging, and it's something that I personally would like to work on. You can leave that in the chat. I'll leave that alone, but I'll come back to see if anybody left anything in the chat um for it. Okay. Any more quotes from chapter 2? Chapter 2 was a very deep chapter. And we're at 7:58, so I'll only go for a few more minutes. Um what else do I want to say? This was a short chapter, but it was really good. Anybody? Well, let me ask another question because this is going to take us into this next chapter. which is actually about honesty and truth. Um, is anyone willing to tell something that when you became an adult and had your own children or began working with your own, group of kids that you realize, is there anything that you realize is maybe harder than you thought when it comes to child rearing? Even if you have children that are grown and you're on here, is there anything that in theory you thought would be easy, but you learned in child rearing the actual experience that it was a challenge? I love to see who would be honest enough to say that on here. You don't have to, you can be discreet, but I love to see. Okay. All right. I'm gonna take Sharia's comment to move right along. She said, "Excellent chapter, extremely thought provoking." Well, it's good to know that we are at least thinking here. We are for sure thinking through some stuff. Hey there. Thank you for stopping in. All right, let's move on. And some of y'all might be typing, it's cool. Well, the comments will be there. Hopefully, I'll get a chance to go back and read over them if I miss any. Um, the last quote. Let me read my one of my last quotes from the childhood chapter to kind of sum it up. Two, actually. I love that she said, in a loving household where there are several parental caregivers, when a child feels one parent is being unjust, that child can appeal to another adult for mediation, understanding, or support. I love that she said that because when I read that, I thought about how it, sometimes that scenario can be looked at like, oh, this child is playing this parent against the other parent. And yes, as she said, as she will say in the next chapter, sometimes children do things like that. They do try to play one parent against the other. But in some cases, it is literally a child having a sense of who is actually going to hear what they have to say or who will actually hear them out in a particular scenario. Not that they're trying to play one parent against the other. I like that she brought that up as a healthy dynamic. I thought that, like, I completely get that, like what she's saying. And I wonder, for those of you with kids, what you think? How you feel about that? And the other thing that she said was, because I see how this could play out. She said, we live in a society where there are a growing number of single parents, female and male, but the individual parent can always choose a friend to be another parenting figure, however limited their interaction. And she went on to give examples of how she had been that for a good friend's daughter. And I think about, and this is not a, I think this is an appropriate example to give. I think about for myself, working within a school, but also being an auntie. Um, you know, how I'm the auntie that is a stickler about certain things, but I'm also the auntie that I want to know like what is really how are you really thinking and feeling about certain things. And I understand that although I don't have the ultimate authority that the parent has when it comes to my siblings, I know that if I go to them about to talk to them about something, they're gonna at least hear me out of what I have to say. But also that they know that I respect them as the parents enough that they would allow their children, they feel comfortable for their children to talk to me outside of them. And I think, just talking about love as a whole and how respect is a part of that. And this is just one example of it in the scenario with children. When you have that kind of relationship with someone that is not the parent that you trust enough to listen to your child, to give them wise counsel, but to also not overstep any particular boundaries, but at the same time, when you have someone that you know loves your child as much as, well, maybe not as much as you do, no comparison, but you know that they love your child enough that they will even confront you if they feel like you are not seeing something or you are doing something that is detrimental to the child. So that is a dynamic that I'm happy that she brought up, because like she said, there are a lot of people who are single parents, or maybe not single parents, but the parents are not in the home together, and sometimes, a child needs to be able to talk to someone besides the parent, and it's a blessing if you have people in your life that can stand in proxy in that way. So yeah, I thought that was important. That's something that I did not want to overlook within this chapter. And I got a lot of comments, so I need to hurry up. And I will close it by saying, I'll just read the last quote of the chapter. She said, "When we love children, we acknowledge by our every action that they are not property, that they have rights, and that we respect and uphold their rights. Without justice, there can be no love." So she repeated that because she said that earlier in the chapter. She repeated that to close it. And um, I love that she did that for emphasis, because it really does wrap up that chapter really well in an aspect of love. And I posted in Facebook before we started tonight that the verse in Micah came to my mind about um, loving mercy and acting justly. How, a lot of things that I'm reading, even though she's not quoting scripture or she's not even speaking theologically per se, um, there there are places in the Bible that come to my mind when it comes to what it means to love as a person. And justice is a part of that. So let's move on. It looks like we'll only get through chapter 3 was a short one. Um, but it is 8:05, 8:06, and I have some quotes to share. So let me see y'all's comments, and then I think we may wrap up. Like, it went too fast. We only got through 2 chapters. We didn't get through 4 or 5, but it's cool. Um, Helena says, "I thought before I birthed children that the older they got, the easier it would be." That's not the case. Ooh, thank you for sharing that. I believe that. Um, the next one says that your kids or students will see the value in doing what you have asked them to do, not for harm, but for their own good or benefit. That's a good one. Thank you for sharing that. All right. Thank y'all for answering that question. I knew y'all would have some answers, and maybe you were just typing. Thank you for sharing. So let me know in the chat. You can say yes or no, and I will respect that, and I will move on, especially for those of you who are participating in the chat. It is 8:07. Is anyone willing to go until 8:20? Can you go for 13 more minutes so that we can get through chapter 3? Or would you prefer to go ahead and wrap this up with a nice bow and um, pick up with chapter 3 next week? Give me a little feedback in the chat. If you want to commit 13 minutes to going through chapter 3, or if you feel like, oh no, chapter 3 was too good, let me know in the chat and I will go with that. Because I want to respect y'all's time. We said between an hour and an hour and a half, but my preference is an hour. Um, but this is just one of those books. Let me know in the chat. I'm gonna wait for a second. Do y'all want to do chapter 3 right quick? Okay, I have one stay on. Oh, I have one wrap it up with a nice bow. All right, that's one on one. I need one more vote. I need one more vote. All right, the next one says save chapter 3 for next time. All right, so we have 2-1 there. I would have continued with chapter 3, but y'all, we can't shortchange chapter 3 because it is good. and it is actually a longer chapter. It is Honesty Be True to Love. And so what I will say to wrap it up with a nice bow is, if you didn't get to read and you started out with us, we only got through 2 weeks. I mean, 2 chapters tonight. So you actually have another week to catch up, because I'm not going to assume that we can get through more than 3 chapters next week. So next week we will discuss chapters 3, 4, and 5. But don't take for granted that we are still going to finish this book. And the goal is to read 11 pages a day, so that you read close to 80 pages a week. And that would have gotten us through the book in 4 weeks. But what I realized was, when I was reading through this week, is that this book is going to carry through, it's going to go into March a little bit, maybe only 1 week, so that we can discuss each of the chapters. I will not shortchange Bell Hooks and All About Love. So it's gonna take more than, we might have to carry this into one more week, and it's cool. I'm happy about it. But what I will say is that I would like for some of you to come on live, and in order for me to do that easily and more efficiently, we will, and I post this so that it is concrete and everybody knows exactly what is what. But I would like to bring some of you on live next week, and the best place to do that is going to be Facebook. So, what I would like to do is, I will still stream the book chat to YouTube next week, but um, the Facebook Live will actually just be in the Facebook app, and that's going to make it a little bit easier for me to pull some of y'all in live. So I'm telling you now, that way if you would like to volunteer and say, sure, I'll come on and talk a little bit about what I'm thinking and feeling and reading, let me know ahead of time. All right? So I'm putting it out there a week ahead of time. I want to pull some of y'all on to talk. I love the comments. Thank you for sharing your comments. If you don't want to come on live, that's fine. Still come and leave your comment. But if you do want to, the space is there. Especially if you're someone that's in a book club. You've been doing this with us for a couple of months now. I would love for you to come and show your face and talk to us a little bit about what you read. So next week we will discuss chapters 3, 4, and 5. So if you're behind, you have a chance to catch up. If you press through and you've already gotten all your reading done, continue reading through the next couple of chapters, and we'll have to catch up with you. All right, this has been so good, but it's just, man, it goes by too fast. All right, thank y'all so much for joining tonight. Thank you for your honesty and your transparency, and your willing to share in the comments to help others. If you're on YouTube, I'm gonna go over there in a second and make sure I check out if there are any comments from y'all. Um, this is good. This is really, really good. Substack folk who came on over to YouTube, thank you again. I'm trying. I really am trying to get to y'all over there. But stay tuned and just go ahead and join the Facebook group. Some of y'all don't really like Facebook, and I get it. I totally agree. Not that I don't like Facebook, but I totally agree that when you're minimizing your social media use, sometimes it's hard to be on Facebook. But you can definitely just use the groups app and take the app off your phone on Thursday, hop back on the app at 7, get in the group with us. It's going to be easier for some things for you to benefit from certain things if you're in the group. So that invitation is still out there. It's still open. All you have to do is click join. So I would love for you to join now while it's still open. It will be a closed group at some point, but for right now, it's still open. So yeah, join us next week. Thank y'all so much for staying on, for discussing, and for being bookworms with me over here, and being willing to let's challenge ourselves and each other as we read. Thank you again for watching. Stay tuned to whichever page you watch from, because I'm going to go ahead and post the stuff for next week so that you'll be ready. Thank y'all for watching. Hope you have an amazing evening, and I will see you next week for our live book chat with the Creative Scholar Book Club. Have a good night.